Greetings. Welcome to the captive desk. Please join me in welcoming
Deconverted Man here. I love that opening.
great opening. Deconverted Man. Hello, how you doing? Good to see you again.
It's great to see you, Captive Desk. I almost solved what your name meant, but again, the Men in Black took me and erased my memory just before I figured it out. So back to square one.
You can find Deconverted Man on his channel, Deconverted Man. There are over 1,300 videos posted there covering logic, and sometimes lobsters. He also has a blog and has written a couple of books, and we'll talk about all that. You can find him on Amazon, and all his links are in the description below. So thanks for stopping by, and let's get right into it. I like to start off with all your back years before all the YouTube, and you're writing your books and your blogs, and then you keep pretty busy. How was your upbringing? Were you raised in a religious environment?
Yeah, so thank you for your time and energy, Captive Desk, to do this. I appreciate it. And everyone in chat and all that. Hi, everyone.
Hello,
yeah,
everybody.
I was raised Christian. I remember mostly the Lutheran church we went to. Before that, I barely remember like what churches we went to, but we always were going to some church, and so we had what I would call the American Christian experience of went to church on Sunday, prayer at meals, but God wasn't really talked about that much per se. Like I don't really remember any in-depth conversations that we had about that. We had the pastor over to bless the house like a couple different times. There was a weird sort of event that we all thought was like paranormal, and we had the pastor come to bless the house because of that event. Um, but yeah, I mean, we
So
always.
what was the event? Don't
Oh
keep us
yeah,
in
yeah,
suspense.
that was kind of like when I was pretty young because it was back in the first house I grew up um, in California because I'm from California, dude. Like for sure, yeah. Um, I don't know. We all it seemed like we what I can remember. Of course, memory is not perfect, so who knows? And I was a kid, so we all seemed to wake up at the same time. We all walked into the hallway, and we all stood in this one spot, and we're like looking like around. I was like, it felt cold, and we're like, and like it felt weird, and we were like, what? And then mom was like, okay, let's pray. We prayed out loud, and then like it stopped feeling cold, so we all went back to bed. And I was like, okay, whatever, Goodness knows what that was, So uh, but yeah, I mean, we always went to church, and that was part of my growing up. When I was like 8, I asked for a Bible because I wanted to be a Christian, but I didn't. I don't think I knew what any of that really was at the time. It wasn't until I was probably a teenager when I started really taking it more seriously and thinking about it and reading the Bible more and trying, getting more involved in the church and youth group and stuff like that. Uh, so that was way later. But as a kid, it was just kind of like in the background, like just part of what, you watch TV, you pray before a meal, you eat a dinner, and then you go to bed. So it's just something we did. Um, but then as a teen, and I got introduced to youth group, that was like, oh, there's food, and then there's girls. Oh, yeah, I love this. Yeah, Jesus, yeah, sure, whatever. Give it, yeah. This is like what, yeah, cute girls, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was, but then I tried to take it really seriously, and I was interested in spiritual gifts. I was interested in the Book of Revelation. I read that half a dozen times at least, um, and I got into this Bible study group where this guy he had memorized the entire Bible, so he would have different questions about, like, today we're going to talk about why God did whatever, and he would know what verses everything happened in. He'd just be like, yes, it's this and this, like he just knew. That's crazy. And then as I got to adulthood, it was harder to really get to church. It seemed like, but harder to find a church that I fit in, and kind of stumbled into a Pentecostal church for a while, which was fun, but kind of weird.
Lively.
Yeah. It's like they're dancing and
Yeah.
I don't know what. Okay, it's fun, So it was fun, but their beliefs I just couldn't really wrap my head around or accept, because I felt it was very unfair what they believed. It just didn't align with what I'd been taught and grown up with, because that particular church, and some Pentecostal churches say this, others say different things, but you had to speak in the tongues to demonstrate you have the Holy Spirit. So if you don't, then you don't, and then if you don't do that, then you're not saved, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like, I just don't get it. And I asked this guy, like, I want to do this. I've been praying to God that it will happen. Nothing's happening. He's like, well, you have to fake it at first. And I was like, what? Doesn't seem right, So, and then I found a different church, and that one was even more strange. It was a Church of Christ, and his thing was you had to be baptized full immersion. You had to know that you had to be baptized full immersion. Of course, the way that the words were said were very, like, it was like the first way that Jesus said to baptize, not the second way. The second way, that doesn't, that, if it's said that way doesn't count, because God's really picky about how it's said, I guess. And so I said, but Pastor, like, because I'd been in the military, and so I was still fresh out of the military at that time. And I'm like, but there's like people like in battle, they're dying, they get their last rites given to them by the what's it called? The church guy. I can't remember.
Priest.
Yeah, not the priest, but we have
the pastor.
The pastor, but we have a specific designation.
Chaplain.
Chaplain. There you go. The word was in my cobwebs somewhere, but yeah, the chaplain would come and he'd sprinkle some water on them and pray whatever rites, or if they weren't Catholic, he'd pray something else, I guess. But regardless, I'm like, you're telling me those guys, because they didn't get baptized in the right way, they're not going to heaven? He's like, no, they're in hell. And I'm like, and he's like, no, yeah, my dad's dead and he's in hell because he was a Baptist. And I'm like, what? It's just, how do you believe that? And then I thought, yeah, this is really unfair. And I thought about that. I was like, that's interesting. If the Pentecostals are right, or if the Church of Christ people are right, a lot of Christians are screwed. And that kind of made me think, wait a minute. But if Christianity is right, then a whole bunch of people are still screwed. So if I don't think that's fair, then what does that mean? Like, does it mean it's not true? And I was like, I don't think it doesn't mean that, So I wanted to really explore that. And so later on, I joined YouTube, and made a couple different channels, and one of them was Infinite Hope, where I was my Christian self, I suppose, where I would do debate time, and I'd like debate ideas with just present the idea that I wanted to express, and try to defend that idea. And I didn't know a thing about logic or evidence or the scientific method, really. It's just whatever I picked up at school. But I encountered all these pesky atheists that kept asking me for evidence. So I was like, of course we have evidence. Like, what do you want? I don't get it. And so at one point, I was talking to somebody, and they're like, "Oh, we have evidence, but even if we gave it to them, they wouldn't accept it." And I'm like, "That doesn't make sense. They keep asking for it. Let's give it to them and see what happens." So I'm like, "Okay, you're not going to do it. I'll go do it." So I started looking up the archaeology, and I couldn't find like anything that was really
And
impressive.
you're and
You
you're
know,
still and you're still a believer. You're
yeah,
still a
I'm still a
believer.
believer, and I'm like, well, of course we have evidence. I just don't know what it
You're just
is.
not sure what.
Right.
Right.
So I'm looking it up, and I'm looking for archaeological evidence because I think, well, of course it's going to be overwhelming. That's what I've been told my whole life. It's overwhelming, of course. I never questioned any of this really, and I never stopped to think if it could be wrong or whatever. Why would I? I mean, everybody around me believed in this, so everybody's a Christian, of course. Yeah, there's non-Christians, but we don't. Now, I've never met one of them. Ooh, they're scary. Uh, I remember being particularly cruel, actually, to one person I knew who I would say friend, but friend was kind of like we knew each other. We were not like we were kind of like antagonistic towards each other. It was really weird. Like he was just a weird guy. Like it's hard to be friends with him. But I knew him well enough. I'd gone to his house or whatever. So we'd hung out. So, but he didn't believe in God, and I was like, saying I remember saying something like, "You don't believe in God because you don't believe in love," and that was such. I wish I could go back and undo that. If I ever get a hold of him, I'm gonna tell him sorry for saying that because that was just wrong. But at the time, it seemed right. And then like he did this thing with like his hand, and I'm like, do this thing with my hand, like we were fighting with the force or something. It was really, and in my mind, we were like he was using evil powers, and I was like using the power of God, and like nothing was going on, but our imaginations were in play, and I guess he was playing with that idea of I have powers, you have powers, kind of thing, and I think that a lot of religion is that sort of play of imaginary play, um, in the best and the worst sense, because you are engaging your imagination to think that there's this thing that's listening to you, and then eventually your brain tells you that is what's going on because you keep telling your brain that's what's going on. Then your brain's like, okay, I guess that's what's going on, and you start getting a kind of a feedback, and that's where
Now, what
people
when you're doing all this asking and everything, did you look into other religions, or were you just
no.
looking for the
No, because they're
for the
fake.
true
Yeah,
Christian
no,
one?
yeah, no, they're fake. I already know they're fake. So
Okay.
yeah, I mean, as a Christian, you're told everybody else is wrong. So I just have to, prove or disprove Christianity. And so I looked at their archaeology, and I kept encountering, I believe it, Ron Wyatt was very big at the time. And I'm like, this guy's a fraud. Everybody's saying he's a fraud. Why are we using this guy to prove stuff? You don't have to make up
He's
stuff.
terrible.
Yeah,
He
he
is
is.
terrible.
But he was big
I've
at the.
got the Ark of the Covenant in my
Oh yeah,
closet, by
yeah,
the way.
yeah. Oh yeah, sure, of
You
course,
just
right.
can't see
Yeah.
it.
Oh
You
no,
just
yeah,
can't see it.
we discovered the Ark of the Covenant or the Ark of Noah at least 5 times. And there was a whole documentary where this guy went to wherever the bleep it was, and this guy owned a mountain, and he was like slowly going up the mountain, and he was like the first reporter ever to be allowed on this mountain. And the guy was taking up the mountain. Yes, I have the Ark up there, and he stopped like halfway. He's like, I don't feel like taking you. It's better that you don't see it. And he's just like,
Eh, just trust me.
okay.
Just
And
trust me.
he's like walking down the mountain, like you could just see like in his head, like, how am I going to make this into a documentary? Like that had to be going through his head. Like he's like, well, that was really interesting, and maybe he has the ark, or maybe he doesn't. I guess we'll never know. I'm
Probably
like, no,
not.
he doesn't have it. But yeah,
What? Yeah. Whenever I hear Ron Wyatt, it's like, oh no, this person,
um,
this
but
person
yeah,
is saying Ron Wyatt. It's like, oh no,
and there was
red flag.
I remember finding at the time when I did this research into the archaeology that there was this well, and this well was really important because it would establish either Bethlehem or it might have been somewhere near Nazareth. It was going to establish something, but they had to date it to be to the time, or it wouldn't matter, you know. So if it fit within this time, that would be great. But they didn't have a way to date it, and the best way to date wells is coins. Apparently, like if you find
Mm-hmm.
coins, then like the latest coin, like the oldest coin in there, that you can at least extrapolate from there. Now, I'm sure they have better techniques now, but at the time I was researching, this is like 10 years something ago. So, um, 11 years now, I think.
It'll at
Yeah.
least give you a range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, right. So they probably have some other technique that they could use today that maybe they didn't have then, or maybe they did. I don't know. But they didn't, but the archaeology team went through and found nothing. And then this Christian led team went through and found gold coins at the bottom of the well that were dated what they needed to be. And they were like, this proves it. And they were like, really? You found it? Well, that's amazing. Can we see them? No, can't see the coins. You'll steal them or something. You'll do something with them. Not going to let anyone see these coins ever. But we know that's true now. We know that location is true. And I'm like, you guys are lying. And I'm like, you don't lie if you have evidence. So
Oh,
where's all
and
this evidence? Where is it? You
and
know?
just a quick little background on who Ron Wyatt was. He claimed to have found everything in the Bible.
Yeah. Yeah.
If there was a pillar or a rock or anything, Ron Wyatt claimed to have found it, but he was really poor on producing anything that he claimed to have found. He's also suspect of throwing chariot wheels down in the bottom of the Mediterranean and taking pictures of them.
Yeah. He has this infamous picture of Mount Cyanide or Seaward, however you say it, or whatever. And it's just a mountain, you know. Um, I think it was even doctored. They didn't have Photoshop, but he doctored it or whatever to put blackness on the top. And it's like, oh, and it's like the location he said it was in. There is no mountain there. That's not where the mountain would be, anyways. Like everything he said about it was wrong in every way that it could be wrong because he was making it up. But yeah, I mean, there was other
That's
people,
Ron.
other examples, right? Yeah, there was other examples of people fabricating evidence. So they, because this Christian group just found these coins when nobody else could, and now we can't see these coins. And so it was just like it started me questioning more and more, like, where is this evidence? I can't find it. But then I stumbled onto apologetics, and I'm like, okay, this is great. This is what I've been looking for. This will respond to those pesky atheists. I'll just learn this. And somebody even got me the Apologetic Study Bible, which is like a $50 Bible. It's pretty thick. And I actually interviewed one of the people that was minorly involved in making that. Like they made, I think, the map in it or something. And I was like, oh, I get a real apologist to talk to on my channel. And I am asking him all these questions. What do I do about this and this? And like, what do you think about William Lane Craig? He's like, yeah, I don't know about William Lane Craig, because I was like, super into it. And I thought, all these arguments I'm memorizing, but I don't understand them. I should learn logic.
Hmm.
Uh-oh. Oh, no, that was a mistake. Well, that ruined me because I saw the arguments. Once I was like, these arguments suck. This no, and it's just learning informal logic changed everything. Changed the way I look at the world. Changed the way I
Well,
definitely. Yeah.
before we get to your big change,
Yeah.
the big change,
Everything happened.
you have brothers, sisters, anything like that that are
Yeah,
family members that are still religious?
yeah. My brother is a theist. I've had him on to talk to at least once or twice on my channel, but pretty much I kind of keep my private life private. My family stuff out of the YouTube sphere. I use a pen name online. Um, I just don't know how you know, I'm in South Carolina. I'll say that much, you know. So, and goodness, you know, who knows,
Well,
you know.
do you still talk to everybody? How about that?
Oh yeah, as far as that goes, so yeah, my when I told my mom, she was like, she understood and accepted it, but then she said something like, I was like, what do you think of it or whatever, and she said something like, I'm afraid you don't have hope anymore, and that really stung, and I was like, of course I have hope. It's just a different kind of hope now. And so, yeah, but yeah, my brother and I worked it out as far as, you know, he still believes in God, but because he's been around me so long, his the way that he believes has changed so much that he has said many times to me, he's like, I know there's no empirical evidence, repeatable test, or valid and sound argument for any of this. I don't know why I still believe, but I do. And I'm like, okay, you know, I don't matter to me. Whatever you believe, you believe. Okay, you know, it's interesting. You know, maybe it's more fun this way. We get to talk about it and have different views. You know, if you deconverted, it would be boring. I don't know. I don't care. You know, because that's not my goal of deconverting. I just want people to understand logic and use good arguments. That's kind of my main uh, hope, if you will. So, but yeah,
what's your different viewpoint then from being cross country from California to Carolina on how are religions uh, viewed, or is there, in the deep South, obviously people go to church a lot. Do people go to church a lot when you were in California,
um,
or was it
I
just
don't.
in your area?
I don't. I really don't know. I mean, I know that we went to church every Sunday pretty much when I was a kid, and then when I was a teenager, I tried to get to church every Sunday. I didn't always get there, but for the most part, I went to church every Sunday.
All the friends and neighbors were there and everything type thing, or
The church I went to was not in my neighborhood, so it was like further away. So it was like a whole different group of people, but it was the one with the youth group, so that's why I went there. Um, but I don't know. I don't know how many people attended church or didn't. I'm not aware of any of that. I was kind of in my own little bubble of, you know, existence where, you know, you're just kind of going to school and doing your own thing. So, you know,
have any ill will against anybody at the churches that you went to?
no, not at all. I have a great deal of admiration to the youth pastor who he taught me to shave. Uh, he would drive us to the church, and we had a Wednesday group with him, and he was just a fun A type personality. He was a great guy. I talk about him a bit in my book, uh, and nothing but good feelings still for him. And the other guy that I mentioned who memorized the Bible, I find that to be amazing. If I wish more Christians were like that. You know, it's like he really took it seriously that this is an important book because he memorized the entire book. He knows where to find everything you could think of in, you know, like verse blah in Malachi. What the bleep is Mal? What Ruth? What is Ruth? What? There's a book called Ruth in there. What? You know, and so, you know, that's sort of you know, he actually, his knowing the Bible and dedicating so much of himself to the church actually drove his wife kind of away from him. I saw, which I thought was weird because she was the one like, "Hey, let's go to church," and he like took it seriously, whereas she was just like, you know, it's not that big of a deal. Like, and he was taking it too seriously, so it like was pushing her away or whatever. And I thought, oh, this is a spiritual battle, you know, at the time. But no, I didn't have anything negative happen, or I don't feel any ill will towards the people that I met. Other than, you know, I feel the pastor that the pastor that thought his dad was in hell, I thought was weird. but I never felt anything bad towards them. I still have good thoughts about the first pastor I had, Pastor Scott, who was in the Lutheran church I started with, and I wrote him some years ago, and he was doing okay, and I asked about his wife, and his wife was not doing that great. She was, I'm pretty sure by now she probably isn't even with us anymore because she was dealing with this debilitating brain disease of some sort. So she probably isn't. I would strongly suspect she's not on the mortal coil anymore after all these years. But they absolutely loved each other and had a great relationship. And he was very pastorly, very, you know, honorable, and yeah, I mean there wasn't any flaw that you could find in the man, if you will. And that seemed to be the case with all my interactions with the different leaders of different churches I went to. I didn't have any bad experience in that way. I went to a gospel church once, and that was a thing. I went to this other church that was, for lack of better term, black church, quote unquote, because, well, I mean, even they called it that. So, I'm like, okay, I'm like the only white guy there. Everyone else was black. So I was like, okay, whatever. And they had this group, and we're all sitting around. They were talking about Abraham and why Abraham had all these problems. And I was like, can we? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, maybe he had all these problems because he had all these wives, and the pastor's like, he'd be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll be home. Oh yeah, honey. He's just laughing, and everybody's laughing. I'm like, yeah, I like this. I'm popular. I want to go to this church from now on. So, and church did help a couple of times. We were pretty much homeless when I was a kid. At points, we'd gotten pretty down, and a church had a shelter that gave us a place, a room, an actual room of our own, my mom and I. And then there was another church that had the cots, out, and so they helped. And the one of those two churches, I'm not sure which one, but they hooked my mom up with Section 8 in California, which is a program to help you pay rent. And the Section 8 people had a place in Pittsburgh that had two small houses, and then one big apartment building, and another little small apartment over here, and different people stay in them while the person's on the program, and they like reteach them math and give them resume skills and whatever, and build up their confidence. And my mom was like, wow, I needed this because this is building up my confidence, because that's what you lose when you lose finances and everything like that. You lose confidence. And I think that's why many people wind up stuck, is there's nobody to give them that little lift up
a hand up, not a handout.
Right. And that's what we got from that program. And so my mom was able to get us, and then we were able to rent a place after that. But if it hadn't been for those churches, then who knows what would have happened. And so I certainly see that there's some benefits in that respect to churches. There's probably some secular stuff out there too, but maybe not a lot, or maybe not enough. Maybe there's not enough of us to do those sort of thing that churches do right now, but it's like we're going to have to be better at that game if we want to have less religion around, because they provide services that nobody else is providing. So, what do you do with that, right?
Well, you mentioned something about youth group. What about school? Did you go to school, or were you homeschooled, or?
No, yeah, I went to school all throughout.
Public school?
No, not towards the end. I was in a very different sort of school at the end. It was a private school. kind of people that kind of like fell through the cracks sort of thing, because I was just like, I had stayed out of school for like weeks at a time, months at a time. They're like, look, you can go to this school or you can go to jail. And I'm like, I guess I'll go to that school. I don't want to go to jail. So it was kind of more rough and tumble kids in that school that had problems with the law or mental problems or a combination thereof. And that school was called L'Haim, and it was made by a nun. She had founded the school. So there's another positive thing from religion. So I don't think anyone can really look at that and say, well, you left God because you had bad things. No, I didn't have anything bad. I had nothing but good. So that's not, there's the evidence. That's why I left, Sorry, the evidence wasn't there. That's all it was. It wasn't any negative anything that I can tell.
Before we get to the big change, then why don't we say hello to everybody real quick?
Hello to everybody real quick.
Let's, check the chat here. Slam, good to see you. Logan's here. Classy is here.
B.S. Lewis. Some name I'm not going to be able to pronounce. Calcinea?
Let's see.
Sandals? Yes.
Scott Duke. Scott Duke saying hello.
Yeah. This idiot Gurmania. What's up with that idiot?
Deconverted B.S. Lewis, Deconverted Man. Can't talk about desks because he isn't a desk.
Good callback. We're not going to talk about that in this stream.
Sharing the link, and it's in the description too. Make sure everybody go check it out.
Thank you. Yes.
And the Ode is in the house.
This, of course, Wesley Curry.
BS, always good to see BS. Yeah. Appreciate you stopping by. Hang loose. And Gur, good to see you. Thanks for stopping by.
Gurmania here. It should be like Gurmania here.
And Sandals says pasta.
It's a very good question.
I had some pasta for dinner.
Yeah. Well, what is pasta?
It's best with lots of cheese.
But what is cheese, and how do we know?
Wesley Curry's here. He says hello.
Yeah. I think he's kind of in his own universe over there.
Something about Satan and that. And then Otangelo shows him the shroud, and he's a Christian to this very day. I'm still waiting for Otangelo to look at my video. I keep asking him, please look at my shroud video. And I ran into him somewhere the other day, and I said, hey, you said you was going to look at my video,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll go look at your video. And he's dissing me again. I'm like, I tried to be nice and everything, and he's just dissing me. So let's see. Anybody got any questions?
Nah.
I saw somebody asking a question.
Shave what? My face. Where? Here. Now. I don't know.
Chicken and tuna and kids. Oh my. Yep.
Well,
making an atheist menu up there.
Yeah. You got to get the kids when they're nice and plump and fresh. That's when they're best.
Oh, where's
I don't see any question marks. Everyone knows everything there is to know about me already.
I have to give it
Fame. I wanna live forever. Somebody was asking
Okay,
fame. That was
there
like
you go.
I saw a question mark. I was like, fame?
All right, BS, you're hooked up, BS. Okay. Melody Joy, thank you for being here. Classia, good to be here. Uh, oh yeah, he died in 1999. I think we're talking about.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
Yeah, I knew. Yeah, I knew he passed away. So, coins on the well were for well keeping.
Yeah,
Indeed.
the mysterious coins that nobody can examine, but we totally have them. Just trust us.
Uh,
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun. Let me take it. Yeah, fake it till you make it. Of course, I've heard that one a lot. I think Aaron Ra talks about that too. That
Oh, well with the
somebody
speaking,
told him that you just got to fake it till you make it.
yeah, the speaking in
Okay.
tongues thing is related to that, I think, uh, because you really do have to fake, and then your brain like programs itself how to do it. Then you're able to do it. So.
All right, here's a good one. Would a lobster or a lion win in a fight? Do you know
I would
the
bet on
lion and the lobster?
I would bet on the lobster every time. Lions can't swim for long enough to beat the lobster, so
Pasta is how you say
they
pester, but
pasta. Yeah,
cooler.
he's not my pasta. He's my pasta.
Pasta.
That way,
And
you know
Chris
when you have
Moore, thanks for
when you
stopping by.
of course when you have a fake pasta, it's an impasta.
All right, it's good to see everybody.
Impasta. Nothing. Okay. Good tongue taste practice. Yes.
All right, good. Yeah, good to see everybody in the chat. Lots of folks here. Great to see everybody. All right, so then we're going to get to the big conversion.
Or
So
deconversion.
you set out to prove that. That before I mentioned the atheist word. How old were you when you first heard the word atheist? Because I've been asking a lot of people, and a lot of folks didn't really seem to know the word till they got older. So
probably.
What about you?
I guess when I was Infinite Hope, I became aware of the word because I don't know that I knew I knew there was non-believers, but I don't know that I knew the word atheist before that. So that would have been 31, 32, something like that. Yeah, so 11 years some odd ago. But yeah,
So then you set out to prove the evil, ignorant, know nothing, in denial, repressing the truth and unrighteousness atheists. So how did that go?
Those pesky atheists always asking questions. Well, the archaeology thing didn't pan out, so I looked at the apologetics and I memorized every argument that I could find, and I thought, oh, William Lane Craig, I love this guy, he's great. Um, and I had an interview.
He seems like a nice guy. I will say that.
Yeah.
He's
he
polite.
Was young,
he seems like a nice guy.
Well, remember, this is 11 years in the past, so he was a lot younger back then. So
yeah, he's showing his age sadly.
Yeah,
lately.
He has been hit with the age stick a bit there,
Mm-hmm.
but and I got to interview an apologist, and and I learned these things, and I thought, okay, this is what I've been looking for, because it's a way to respond to these pesky atheists, and but I was still deep in these questions of like, okay, what? There's no evidence, but I do have these arguments, but I need to understand these arguments. And I was like, I got to learn logic. I have to learn logic. That's the only, and so I did. I sat down and I read an informal logic book, and I studied it and read through it again and again, and I was like, okay, I think I've got a handle on this. So I looked at the argument and I'm like, oh, this sucks. And I looked at a different argument. I'm like, this one sucks too. And this one, and they all, oh dear, they all suck. And so I was like, I've got a problem. And so the only thing that there was a moment of spiritual, if you will, calling out for God, where I was in the corner of my room, crying bitter salt tears. I was just a mess. And I was like, even in the fetal position, I was just shaking and praying to God for something. Give me a sign, tell me, just let me know, that you're really there, because I don't have anything else to go on now. And then I thought, oh, wait a minute, in the past, I've been able to pray to God and ask for a zap. And whenever I asked for that zap, I would get this like zap up and down my spine. So God has given me that every other time I've prayed, so I should pray for that. So I was like, can I get that zap at least? And it didn't happen. And I'm like, man, just nothing from God, no sign, no zap, no anything. And it's like, okay, there's no God. I mean, that's it. I mean, what else can I do? There's no evidence. God itself doesn't seem to care about me or acknowledge me. And so what else am I supposed to think? And I was like, and I didn't want that to be the case. I didn't want that to be, I fought against it for a bit in my head. Maybe I missed something or overlooked something, or, maybe this, maybe that, but I just tried, hey, God, help me out here. Nothing. I'm like, okay, well, if there is a God, it doesn't seem to care about me at all, because I'm in, I'm in the pits, and it's not responding at all, and that doesn't make sense, because in the past it seemed like God responded. So why wouldn't it respond now? Is it testing me? Why would it test me now? It's not a time to test me, you know. Uh, but I had no reason to believe in it, because I didn't have any evidence. I didn't have any. There was no test. I already knew there was no test I could run on God, because it says in the Bible you can't test God. So I didn't even need to look for a scientific way of testing God, because I knew that wasn't going to be a thing. If God was real, there wouldn't be a way to test it. If God was the God of the Bible. So, and I also had no valid and sound argument. So what did I have? All I had was pure faith, but that wasn't enough. And if there had been a sensation or whatever when I prayed for like a zap, I might have still believed a little bit longer than I did, but there wasn't. So that was kind of the end of it at that moment. Um, and I think I even said out loud, well, there's no God. And yeah, I had nightmares for a long time after that of death. And I had dreamed a couple of times of dying when I was a believer, but like there was a truck or a van that hit me, but I was a spirit going through the truck or van, like I was still there. My body had been flung away, but I was still there as a spirit. But now, when I had a nightmare about death, and I died in the dream, I just woke up. That was it. That was the end of the dream, because there was nothing more. And so I think I was having those nightmares because my brain had to reprocess what death meant. Um, this is without
Fear.
God. Yeah, there's no
Yeah.
after.
You
Yeah,
had the fear. Did you have the fear of hell?
no. Because if there's no afterlife, there's no soul, there's no spirit, there's no anything. So
It was an all or nothing for
yeah,
you.
yeah, it was it. And so because I already didn't believe in other gods, so it was like, okay, well, there you go. I just don't, there is no God, because if I've concluded this God is valid and I already don't believe in the other gods, then by default there is no God, because I said this God doesn't exist. It has no evidence, no repeatable test, no valid and sound argument. It won't talk to me if it is there. So that's it. I'm done. and it
Yeah,
was rough.
you mentioned William Lane Craig.
Yeah.
Is there anybody on the other side that you started listening to? Where you did you start to listen to like Dawkins or Hitchens, or any of the ones that people often mention?
Um, Not for a long time. No. I went through maybe about a year as an in the angriest atheist phase, if you will, where you're just really angry that people lied or were wrong or that you wasted all this time on this belief, and having to process and recontextualize the world, and like, how do I deal with mortality, all these things that were just, what do you do when somebody goes off for work? Because I'd pray for them. Well, now what do I do when somebody goes off for work? I just hope that nothing bad happens. I guess there's nothing, I can't summon a thing that will protect them. I can't ask for that because there's nothing to ask to protect them. I just, and so how do you deal with that? Because you don't have that comforting feeling anymore in your life. So I had to rethink all that, what does that mean? All those sort of thoughts. And I also had to kind of work through, well, what about these spiritual experiences I thought I had? What were those about? How do I explain those? Maybe that can restore my faith. But the more I thought about that, I was like, well, there's all these plausible naturalistic explanations for any number of these things. So simply because I don't know, that doesn't mean therefore God. That's bad logic. So what do I have then? You have this kind of So, but after that year, then I started doing, I guess, Deconverted Man, and listening to some of the more bigger atheists like Dawkins or Hitchens or whatever, and uh, but I was mostly focused on looking at the arguments that Christians were making, because that's what had, for me, that's what had done it, was logic. Learning logic deconverted me. So I'm not infinite hope now. What am I? Well, I'm not finite despair. That doesn't really make sense. I'm deconverted man. Not I'm so okay. I'll do that, and I'll point out the fallacies that these Christians make in their arguments, and maybe they'll make a better argument and win me back to their side. It's possible. They haven't done it. It's only been 11 years. Maybe next year.
Anything's possible.
Anything's possible. I just find it highly unlikely. But
I set the bar real low. I say, hey, find me somebody that can pick the lotto numbers every week.
yeah,
And I'll consider going to church. I'm like an all or nothing too. If you can show anything supernatural, then I would have to consider all the other
yeah,
supernatural
yeah.
claims.
And one example would be enough to get me to investigate it further, certainly. But we don't even have that. So it's like, well, it's a mundane world, but it's still an amazing world. And then I got this kind of reinvigorated to science and learning, and like, it's like, wow, okay, I can learn about real. I can learn anything about anything, and it doesn't bother me to learn something, because if I'm wrong, I just learned something new. And so I'm not afraid of listening to religious ideas like I was when I was religious, because those aren't demons or devils or fake. It's like, yeah, okay, I'll listen to your idea. Uh-huh. Why do you believe that? Okay. Interesting. All right. Now I understand that better. Still don't believe it, but at least I understand it, and so I can learn about anything without a fear of losing faith or whatever. And I've seen and heard Christians talk about struggling with their faith. I'm like, don't struggle, let it go. You don't need it. You don't need faith. You only need facts. When you have fact, you don't need faith anymore. It's amazing. You don't have to struggle so much to hold on to this thing, because it's not of use to you anymore. And it never was. You look in your past and you go, God helped me get that job. No, you got that job. Your hard work got you that job. God didn't do anything. God wasn't even there. All the times that you thought God was helping you, that was you helping you in your own head. And so you're stronger than you thought because it was always you doing overcoming the obstacle in life, getting through the mess. That was always you. And the few times you've had other people help you, that was them. It's all we humans are all we've got for each other. So let's help each other. And so if
we
anything,
we need each other,
we need
like it
each
or
other.
not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
You don't have to like everybody. You don't have to be
oh
friends with
yeah.
everybody, but we need each other, even if people you don't know that, fix the puts the lights back on when a tree takes the wire out, whatever.
Yeah.
We need each other,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, we're all we have.
like it or not. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think that there's a wonder in learning about how reality really works because it's really real and you don't have to have faith about it. And there's a mystery, sure. But that
And then
mystery,
you like talking about it because you like talking
yeah.
about it with a bunch of people on your channel too.
Yeah. Yeah. I love,
So you
I,
seem to enjoy it a lot. So
yeah. Yeah.
what
I mean, that
what
question of like, well, why do you talk about God so much if you don't believe in it? That comes up every now and again. And it's like any number of reasons I could give. It's a hobby, it's like model trains, it's like, you know, why do people play with model trains when they're adults? I don't, because it's fun, it's interesting to talk about, interesting to think about. And it's interesting that humans have this amazing ability to use their imagination, and that can be good or bad, or it can be neutral. And I've talked about this idea with my brother. I said, what if Jesus doesn't exist at all, or if he did exist but he didn't do any of the things that are in the Bible, but if the ideas are decent, then if you're following the ideas, that's all that really matters in the end. So the man doesn't have to be a god for the ideas to be valid or invalid. And so if they're honorable ideas, then you don't need it to be a god. You just need the ideas to be good ideas. And he agreed with that idea, but he still views Jesus as God. So what are you going to do? But that's okay. Maybe his brain is wired that way, for all I know. Uh, Maybe that's the case with many believers. Maybe their brains are just wired to believe in God. That could be a possibility. Maybe our brains, uh, some atheists that I've met that were always atheists, maybe their brain is wired to that. Maybe there's other brains that are wired to be able to switch back and forth. I'm no expert in that thing, but I can conceive that that's possible because brains are amazing. We all have different brains. So, and we certainly know that people can believe in all sorts of weird things that aren't real. So, why not God? Why wouldn't God be another thing that's not real? And if there is a real thing that we would call God, well, then how do we identify that? What things does a thing have to have for it to be a god? And what if it's nothing like what we thought? Then would we even recognize it? Those sort of questions are open ended. You ask a theist, what's God made out of, or how does God think without a brain? Those are it's open, or I in my book, Caught Between an Infinite Hope, Finite Despair, got to plug it. I asked the question, okay, you have to choose between an afterlife or no God, or a God but no afterlife. What do you choose and why? Because that's a very important question to ask yourself as a believer in God: is what is your priority in? Is it in the afterlife, or is it really in your God? And so if you're not willing to do that thought experiment, then you're just not willing to challenge, you know, what you believe, and that's lazy. You know, we need to be willing and able to challenge what we hold most dear. Um, and if you're unwilling or unable to do so, then that's going to be the thing that you know is could be false, and you will never know because you didn't challenge it. Wouldn't you rather know? I would.
Well, with all the arguments that you've been debunking, are there any good ones out there that you've had trouble debunking?
No. Not no. Sadly,
No.
Saint Augustine kind of kicked off apologetics as we know it today for the most part, and during his day when he made at least one of the arguments, because he has like the 7 ways and things like this, one of the arguments he made, because of the science at that time, it would have been seen as valid if only it wasn't for the appeal to ignorance that's also in the argument. The way to fix that is simply make the argument into a hypothetical syllogism. Then it works. And it works for his time period, but it doesn't work in our modern day because we know more about science. So the hypothetical syllogism falls apart in the modern day apologetics, but back in his day, it would have been seen as a pretty darn hard to knock down argument because the way that they understood science was different back then. But now it would be blown out of the water, and has been. There was more of a modern argument that was going around for a while. Now I can't remember the name of it, but it was this idea that you couldn't explain consciousness. Consciousness can only come from consciousness. And it was very verbose, very wordy, very philosophical in nature. And it sounded really good, but it just boils down to we don't know how consciousness works, therefore God. That's all the argument really boils down to. And so it's too complicated to easily memorize the argument. And so a couple of theists mentioned it, and then it just went poof, like it doesn't exist anymore because it's too complicated of an argument. It's too verbose. It's too wordy. There's too many big words in it to make it simplify down to a syllogism. And so when you analyze it, you recognize immediately the fallacies are all over the place. And I think to some extent the theists realized that even if they were ignoring the fallacies, they realized it was too wordy and it wasn't going to work. Apologetics hasn't updated in a long, long time, and there's a reason for that.
I like to say they prefer an audience because if you do like you and I do, where you sit there and you take notes, and I did this. William Lane Craig said something one time, and it sounded really great, and I was like, wow, that sounds really good, but I have no idea what he's saying. I have to admit the words he was using, I had to look them up, but I wrote it down. And I looked up the meanings to all these words and everything. And when I put it all together, I was like, he didn't say anything in that sentence. He didn't say anything. But it's even to me, I was thinking, wow, that sounds, and if you're in the audience, that's where you're left,
right.
Yeah. But unless you come back later and watch the video and take notes, and then you're like,
right.
That sentence didn't say anything at all. It was just a circle of nothing.
Yeah, and so I find it interesting that for some believers, and usually in Christianity, because that's the majority of people that happen to be on YouTube, the few Muslims that I encounter usually don't speak English. I had a Hindu once, but they didn't interact with me at all. So it's been primarily Christians. I'd love to go after other religions. Send them my way. If you find a video, I'll analyze it if it's in English, But, they have to present some sort of argumentation somewhere in that video. Otherwise, it's not going to be a thing I can really do anything with. But I'm happy to look at other concepts of God besides Christianity because people go, oh, why are you picking on the Christians? Because they're there. They're the ones making the most amount of videos, so they're the ones interacting with me.
Yeah, they're around. Yeah,
they're around. I mean, I'll go
and
after.
They're usually causing trouble too. So yeah.
Well, I'll go after whoever. And it's like, well, what about other atheists? Sure, I'll tackle that too. Give me a video you think somebody made a bad argument. I'll analyze it. I can't do my own videos though. Well, I did my past Infinite Hope videos. I can analyze those for fallacies, but I can't really properly analyze it because it's me in the end. And so it's better to have somebody that isn't you analyzing your argument, because they're an objective source in it, or they're less subjective than you will be. You'll be easier on yourself more than likely,
How
or
harsh
yeah,
how harsh are you on yourself
pretty hard.
for your old videos?
Yeah. Well, I have a playlist, me versus me, and I'm pretty hard on my past self because I was pretty darn dumb. I have like, here's this car, and I do the whole, basically it's the watchmaker argument, and I'm like, what was I? What? You idiot! No, shut up! No, why? And I had somebody listen to it live, and I was just like, why did I have them listen to this live? What was I thinking? I'm like, here, analyze my video.
We had
It's so horrible.
we had a good time with that on BS's channel, I think.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, that's what it
Yeah.
was. I was like, oh, it's so horrible. Shut up, past self. Shut up. No, you're wrong. You're wrong. Oh, it hurts. Yeah. But that's okay. He didn't know that he was wrong. So technically, I was right, which is the best way to be right.
So
if you didn't know that you were wrong, then no.
Are there any big names that you listen to these days at all? Do you follow any of them, or get their books or anything? Or you still pretty much like to do stuff yourself?
I have a lot of books on atheism that somebody kindly gifted to me. I've read through a couple of them, but really, I'm more interested in interacting with other. I don't the bigness or famousness of somebody is irrelevant. What matters to me is the arguments that they present. So I look for I look for arguments. I look for not necessarily always debates per se, because debates can be malformed too. There could be a problem with how debates are. But if somebody's doing a proper debate, then I'll listen to it. But I don't really have anybody that I would, say I listen to in that respect. I'm subscribed to, I think, everybody that's subscribed to me just about as far as all the atheists go, or the skeptics, or the agnostic, or whatever label you want, because we like different labels. We like to apply different labels to ourselves.
The captive desk.
Yeah, that's a label, right? And Deconverted Man's a label, and skeptic's a label, and atheist is a label, and they don't really tell us everything there is to know about us. It tells you a little bit, but it doesn't tell you everything. So then you have to ask questions. And I was going to say about the theist.
I love to tell people, just ask.
Yeah,
just ask. I'll tell you. You don't have to make up all these things about me.
This one theist I remember, who I said, do you know informal logic? And he was like, I'm familiar with it. I'm like, just say no. Come on. You don't know it. Okay. And he's like, okay, no. I'm like, all right, fine. How do you know these arguments? Because he kept presenting like Kalam or whatever. And I'm like, how do you know that that's a good argument? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you don't know the system. How do you know it's a good argument? He's like, well, it looks good. I'm like, then you don't know. So if you didn't learn informal logic, how are you going to know what arguments are good or bad? He's like, I'm just not interested in learning informal logic. I'm like, well, you're just.
And these things, and a lot of these things sound good because, like, ultimately they're trying to sell it to you.
Right.
So there's, it sound, yeah, like I said, a lot of these arguments, they sound really good. Yeah, but are you actually listening? Are you actually taking it apart?
There is a bigger-ish YouTuber, now that I said that I will have to shout out, I think, because there he is. Okay, I'll put it in chat too. No, I won't. I'll put it in private chat because I have to go over to real chat to do that, to be a chat of. But his channel is CH Dan Hauser, and he has animated Star Trek public service announcements where Spock will explain logical fallacies. It's the best thing that there is on YouTube. Period. That's it. I love it. I love every bit of it. It's amazing.
All right,
He
I
also
think
did. He did an actual episode of
should be
Star
in the
Trek.
chat.
But yeah,
It should be in the chat there. So.
yeah, there it is. So
I
that
dude it.
yeah, he has like he has actual like episodes that he made somehow of the classic Star Trek when it was a cartoon. 'Cause, he's made his own cartoons somehow using, I don't know how he does it, but he made his own episode. So he has that as well. But the ones that I really love, I mean, I like that too because I like Star Trek because I'm a nerd, you know. But
Me
you don't
too.
have to. You don't have to be a nerd to like Star Trek, but I am a nerd, and also I like Star Trek, just to make sure that those categories aren't stuck together. He just did like Black Swan fallacy, so the absence of evidence is an evidence of absence, for example. And so then sometimes it will be in the mirror universe, like he has appeal to ridicule that logical fallacy is explained in the mirror universe. And so it's really cool. It's like here's this. Spock will just hear everybody's arguments because he's got the ears, you know, and he'll just come over and be like, "What are you guys arguing about? I heard this thing. You employed this fallacy," and they're like, "Oh, I should have thought that," and then I'll be like, here's why you shouldn't do that fallacy, blah blah blah, and then like it's the same kind of formula every time, but it's really cool because you know, if you don't know the fallacies, not only is it teaching the fallacy, but it's also giving a demonstration of the fallacy in action. And the characters will almost always say, but their argument sounded reasonable, or their argument seemed convincing, or sounded true. And it's like, yes, but it contained this fallacy. So because of that, you have to reword that argument. And so I wish he would do, I hope he does one day, talk about what you should do with the conclusion when you have a fallacy, which I think, and I've promoted, you should be skeptical of that conclusion because you don't know if it's true or false. So you should just say, okay, there's that conclusion. I'm putting it over there. And until I get a better argument, that's where it's going to stay. It might be true, might be false. I don't know. But come back with a better argument and then we'll examine, we'll take that down again. We'll look at it then. But right now, you haven't given me a reason to think that it's true. And I don't have a reason to think that it's false. What I do know is the argument sucks. That's all I know for sure. And so that's the tool of informal logic, is to do that, is to decide if the argument's valid, then you look into it. If it's not valid, then you're just simply skeptical of it. It goes up on that shelf. You leave it alone. You don't know if it's true. You don't know if it's false. You don't say, you're not doubting it. You're just, it's there and you don't know. And you're not sitting yeah.
And what else is up on that shelf would be Dan Green's books.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what they would be?
The shelf, right. The shelf also contains.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I have two books, Caught Between an Infinite Hope and a Finite Despair, which is a more in-depth version of my deconversion story, walks you through my faith growing up in more detail than I provided here or on my channel. And then I also intersplice it with questions that I'm asking myself, the audience, theists that might be reading the book, and, you know. And I had this idea when I first started writing it, that of this interesting idea when I was a believer of, I'm Infinite Hope, when I was this person on YouTube that did Christian videos, and I made up a character called Finite Despair, who's like my rival guy that I'm fighting, you know. And also I had Linear Doubt, because why not? You know, it's another play on words. And I thought that this was an interesting way to look at the world. Like, there's this infinite hope of a heaven and a paradise, but then there's a finite despair if you don't have that. And I play with that concept in the book to some degree as it goes on, saying, well, do you really have a finite despair if you don't believe? No, and here's why. And, you know, or maybe you do, and here's why. Or maybe you have the infinite hope, and here's why. And going back and forth with that idea throughout the book to kind of give it some sort of theme. And I don't know if anyone's seen that or caught onto it or whatever, but hopefully, well, they will now because they heard it. So, but yeah. And then the other book I wrote is called The Lightbringer, and that one's not a uh, was it is a fictional book. So the first one's nonfiction, right? Because it's true. The other one's not true. So I hate that. It's so confusing. But that one's like basically in that universe, we're looking at the Bible as if the events in the Bible really played out, but we get to observe what really happened for real from the one guy who we can trust, which happens to be the Lightbringer, aka you might have heard of him. Some people call him Satan, the devil, and stuff like that. But actually, he's the good guy, and he's telling the story how it actually happened. So it's a good kind of just fun read through. It's nothing really necessarily, mind blowing or deep or whatever per se, but then again, it might be, and it might change your life. You never know until you buy it. Also, it's kind of good for hammering in nails, but I wouldn't recommend it. But it can be used for that. So,
and it's on Amazon, and I put the links in the description. So go get his books and check them out.
Yes, please. I get a whole whopping like $6 or $3 depending on which one you buy. So yeah, maybe I'll get kind of rich. Probably not, but but yeah. And then I also have my blog, which is just every now and then I'll write something on the blog, and I don't have any idea who reads my blog, if anyone, or how often it's read, because I don't get any metrics or data from that at all. And nobody has interacted with me, like asked me any questions about my blog. So it's just kind of like, yeah, it's there. And sometimes I write stuff on it. So I don't know. I guess I'll share my favorite thing from the blog, or one of my favorite things from the blog. I'll just put that here. We could have had this set up ahead of time if I thought of it, but I didn't, because I don't know. So that's in private chat. If you could put that on share screen. Yeah, there is a master list of logical fallacies. You can find a number of different lists like that. But yeah, there's about 100, 200 something logical fallacies. But most of them are kind of subsets of the main fallacies. So that's why there's so many different ones. They're kind of just subsets, like appeal to ignorance and appeal to personal incredulity is really kind of a subset of the same thing. So here's my explanation for why Jesus's body is no longer around. So Jesus dies, and his disciples are very sad, but they do remember what Jesus told them, that his body was bread and his blood was wine. So obviously Jesus was eaten by his followers. That's why there was no body. They ate it, all of it. It's gone. They ate his entire body, and that's what happened. And that explains it. You can't be refuted. Nobody's done it yet. So that's the explanation. I also had a joke about The Walking Dead, because that was still on when I wrote it. But there's a character in The Walking Dead called Jesus. But I thought it would be funny if they had him come back as a zombie in 3 days. But they didn't do that, so oh well. But yeah,
everybody go read the blog, and
everyone read that.
And leave some comments.
I don't even know if you can leave comments. I don't have any idea. I've never seen it, but yeah. So Jesus was eaten by his followers. That's what happened. Can't prove it wrong. 100% true. But if you're not satisfied with that, then I do have a religion for you. You could be part of, if you're looking for a religion. And that is the Lobsterist. And there's 2 books of the Lobsterist. I don't know who wrote them, but they're completely true. They say in the book that they're true, so I don't know why you would doubt it. I'm sure there's maybe some bad ideas about killing turtles in there, but every religion has to have something weird in it, so why not? And the second book's like, it's got built-in apologetics. It's like, look at the trees. Ever notice how the tree branches look like little claws? It's all lobsters. That's it, man.
Okay.
You know, and like then there's this part in the second lobsterist book that says edit this out later. Now, see, using the criteria of embarrassment, we can know that nobody would write edit this out later and leave it in there if they were making up something. So obviously, it's a true book because this embarrassing thing of, hey, edit this out later is left in the book. That's how we can know it's a true book.
Obviously.
Obviously, because that's how that works.
All hail Bigfoot.
No, lobsters. Lobsters! Now, of course, you're going to ask why lobsters. It's a very.
I was just going to ask why lobsters.
I know. You were going to, on the screen. Look, we don't have time. We've been here for long enough. One day I will explain the lobsters, but it's not today. I'm sorry, everybody. But maybe next time you'll have to subscribe, and you'll never know. It might. Maybe I already did explain the lobsters. It's in one of my videos. You don't know. You'd have to go find it.
Wise words. All hail the lobster. Well, I looked long and hard to find a nice lobster picture for you. So.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
a lot of them just didn't have good pictures of them. I'm like,
yeah, you know.
So you need to get some scuba gear there.
Yeah, I really
and
do.
hit the beach and get some better pictures because I looked all over. They just don't have good pictures of them.
Yeah, well,
most of them are in traps or on a sandwich.
Yeah. Well, hey, if somebody wants to send me enough money to buy a scuba gear, I'll definitely do it, and I'll make videos. Sure, why not? I'll analyze theistic videos underwater as I hold a lobster.
so I have to ask, do you like lobster?
You know, it's funny. We went to Red Lobster for birthday, and I'm like, I don't want you to eat lobster in front of me. I don't want to eat. I have made the meme real. Oh no. I can't eat them. I love them too much now. I've used them so much for my own meme that I talked myself out of eating them.
Long live the lobsters.
Yeah. But good times. But yeah, it's part of my my state. It's like lobsters exist. That's premise one. What's premise two? I don't know, but I mean, we all accept premise one, so you can really make any syllogism from that. You know, like lobsters exist. If lobsters don't exist, I'm not God. Therefore, I am God because lobsters do exist. There you go. Okay, that works. Probably has some fallacies in it.
And that's where my Bigfoot thing all started too.
Yeah,
I did the same thing. No, it was Bigfoot. You can't prove it's not Bigfoot.
Right. Can't prove it wrong.
So and it grew from there, and now I have lots of Bigfoot T-shirts and
and if
hats
you ever
and everything. So.
Yeah, and if you found a restaurant that was serving Bigfoot, you wouldn't be able to eat Bigfoot.
No.
So you know where I'm coming from. Then we just
no Bigfoot burgers.
And people they'd be like coming up and you, oh, what's Bigfoot taste like? Ha ha ha! And they have all these things about eating Bigfoot. You're like, no, stop! No, why are you always doing that? Leave Bigfoot alone! No. And they do it more because they know it annoys you. They're like, no, stop. Anyways,
it's mostly good fun, and most of the ones are in on the joke there. I see comments with foot jokes and stuff, so it's all good. I appreciate it.
Well, you know what they say about people with big feet.
That's why I keep telling people.
Whatever. I don't know what they say, but it's probably true. I don't know. But
I don't know.
My lobster is well, it's not very big, but it works. Well, no, that's not true either.
I don't know. I'm not sure on the length, but I know I got a triple E, but I got a triple E width.
I'll just say this: my lobster hasn't had a lot of attention in a while. So, what are we talking about? I don't know. End the series.
Poor lobster. Poor lobster. All right. Well, before we go, let's say check the chat here and say hello to everybody that came through. Appreciate seeing everybody. Pragmatic Crystal and Classia and Sandals, and everybody appreciates you. Trying to see if anybody had anything. Scott asked DM to give his critique of presuppositionalism, please. I think we got it.
It sucks.
Big Bad Mama, great to see you. Thanks for stopping by. And Nerdy Rodent, good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Big Bad Mama saying hi to everybody. Nerdy's got lobsters.
Thank you,
fan.
Nerdy. Yes, and Nerdy also sang a song of mine, and he did a really good job of it. I appreciate that. It's on one of the Deconverted Band BAND albums. I have 2 of those up. So if you want some music, you can check out some of that. I don't understand that joke. Derek V. Man, DVM. I don't know.
I figured you would know.
I don't know. But I do know. I do know.
Good to see you, Gur. Thanks for stopping through.
I do know that if you spell YES several times in a row.
BS. Told him to speak the prophecy about frogs and chicken salad. No?
No.
I like frog legs. I like a good frog leg.
Well, the thing is with frogs that you gotta catch them quick before they croak.
I do have a frog friend hanging around the pond. I'm hoping for tadpoles, but I don't see a friend. I only see one. So,
well, they can't.
Last year I had a couple. I had a couple of them. So I'm hopeful I get some. I want some tadpoles in my pond. Dang it! I got dragonfly nymphs. Those are pretty cool, but haven't had any tadpoles yet. So I'm hoping. Keep hoping. Fake it till you make it. Yeah, that's really, really old. You should have faked learning logic.
Yeah, that would have kept me a Christian, probably.
Slam says, I never knew Christians growing up. With me, it was always casual, so I never took it too seriously. So I don't have, when you can go to Deconverted Man's channel and see when I was on there, and I'll tell you my story, which very casual. I didn't have a big conversion story, but you can go and see it on his channel.
Yeah, he's been on my channel. All the cool people have been on my channel.
That's right.
And all the not cool people too. So all the people, not all the people, most of the people, many people have been of. Right, Pikachu? Right? Okay.
Melody Joy, always a pleasure. And everybody else, yep, looks like we've got everybody covered. And I appreciate everybody stopping through and saying hi and hello and showing you the love. And if you're not subscribed, go over there and subscribe to Deconverted Man. And Deconverted Man, what's coming up on your channel in the future?
That's a good question. Well, I have yet to finish reading through all 613 commandments because I thought that would be a good idea. It wasn't, and I hate it, but I'm going to finish it because I started it. And then I got to go back to, I was looking at some apologists now that I had a series going on, and had another series about stupid things, whatever his face says. Mark, stupid things Mark says. I'm going to go back and do that. At some point, I really do need to do a review of God's Not Dead 4 because I sort of promised I was going to do that. And I kind of gave up on trying to watch the movie because it was so bad. But I did say I was going to do it, so I guess I have to do it now. But everyone forget that I said that, so I don't have to do it. But other than that, I don't know. Whatever comes my way, whatever I think is interesting or funny or random, or maybe it's logic, maybe it's just something silly, maybe it's an interview. Never know. I don't have any sort of pattern or upload schedule. Sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's a few minutes, sometimes it's whatever. I've got a ton of playlists though and the one I always want to recommend is the Sci-10 Bergen Gate versus Matt Dillahunty debate analyzed. Karen S helped me with that. Without her, wouldn't have been able to do that. Terrific, wonderful, wise woman. Amazing job that she did. So if you're gonna watch some content, you've got a couple hours to spare, you can play through the entire playlist. It's like basically, if you do that, it's essentially it's like an hour some odd plus of content to listen to, and every fallacy is counted. And so yeah, and there might be an Easter egg if you're actually watching on top of just listening. I know a lot of people just listen to the content too, but if you actually do watch the screen, you might see something pop up at some point that's kind of funny. But if you're just listening, hopefully it's interesting. Hopefully you learn something, or you think about something you haven't before, because it's really important we challenge ourselves and we always keep the knowledge that we are just as susceptible as anyone else to falling for ideologies, beliefs, or patterns, because we are pattern seeking creatures. And so we have to use reason and logic in order to scrutinize our own beliefs to make sure that they are in line with reality, or at least as close as we come. Because if we don't have empirical evidence, and we don't have a repeatable test, and if we don't have a valid and sound argument, then we have to be skeptical of the conclusions.
Absolutely. We have to check ourselves more than anything. And there's a picture for you from Glacia there.
Yeah, it's got a face on it.
There's a rainbow colored lobster just for you.
Yeah, it's a face on it. I can see the face. Smiling at me. You see the face? See, look, there's its eyeballs and mouth.
Yep.
It's got a mustache. Yeah. That proves it right there. Lobsters made humans.
I'll have to get a lobster shirt now. All right. Well, thanks to everybody in the chat, and thanks Deconverted Man. And hey, everybody out there, if you like discussions like these, subscribe and hit the bell for future videos. And I'll see y'all then.
Goodbye. Okay. Are we off here yet? Time to do this if we're